Also, jetzt geht es tatsächlich los. Herzlich willkommen zum 5. und vorerst letzten musikalischen Online-Salon. Die Veranstaltung heute wird auf Englisch stattfinden. Wenn aber jemand jetzt den Stream sieht und denkt, er hat doch eine Frage, kann sie aber nur auf Deutsch stellen, dann bitte einfach rüber nach Zoom kommen und ich übersetze von Deutsch ins Englisch. Okay, welcome to the fifth and last, well, in some ways, many ways, the sixth and last Musikalischer Online-Salon for this year. It will be in English. If someone wants to ask a question in German, of course, I'll translate it. I'll start with a short excerpt of the piece that's not really a part of the piece. The piece is very long. It's somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes, so I can't play all the piece in the beginning. But I'll do something that gives you at least an idea of what it could be. So I play the first part, but in a shorter version. So the beginning of what I'm playing is the real piece, and then I jump a bit, and but you will get an idea how this piece is built. Okay. I always have to change some things, and to be sure that I don't forget anything, Lisa knows what I have to do, so I will always mention what I do, and she controls me. So, I'll give you the good sound, and I'll take the microphone out of the main. And here we go. I'll change to Ableton. So this was fake music. Fake because it was just a part of it that doesn't exist. But this idea of something building up and then vanishing again. But I'm not going to talk about the piece now, Lisa. It's up to you to tell us something about your composing and about this piece.
Yes. Well, I guess what you noticed, yes, is that the general form idea is very simple. It is about tones that build up a certain kind of entity of sound, and then these tonal landscapes that appear 3 times will be replaced by very soft humming sounds. And while these humming sounds are erasing those tones, there will still be a certain kind of aural shadow or echo of these tonal landscapes. Because we are using a looping technique, and all these sounds will be looped, so the chords will be built up. There are 22 or 24 notes maximum playing at the same time, so the notes are these tones are in certain kinds of spectral relationships with one another, and I'm using quite a lot of natural harmonics. Not so much because of their tuning, but maybe even more so because of their specific sound. And playing with these very, very beautiful nuances that they have. I guess what appeared while we were rehearsing, that the many things that I had imagined technically will sound different, because there's quite a lot of well, there is a certain kind of system behind this, that Matthias is looping, then sending them to speakers. The microphones are picking up the tones from the speakers, and so this process is somewhat, let's say that we don't have that much control over the process, and especially when in the second half of the piece so many overdubbings appear, and this piece really depends on what is happening in this moment, and it's shaped by these moments. So when I started writing this piece was this kind of natural processes of erosion and what's the opposite, deposition, and to see how they would shape this musical material. Yeah.
The funny thing for me is that or did you want to go on? I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I was just wondering if I should go on, or we will have later also, we can have a discussion. So
in the very beginning you told me that that you want to reach a point that's really at the edge. And yesterday we had a 6-hour rehearsal and just checked the balances, and it's really it's a very small Draht is the German word. I don't know the English word. Like walking between two mountains, and you just have a way like this, and either it's getting too loud and you fall down to the right, or it's too soft and you fall down to the left. And in the one case, there's nothing happening in this piece, and in the other case, you have a feedback, and in both cases, it's, well, the one is awful, the other one is boring. But I tell this because you really reached that point that you wrote something that's so much on the edge that it has to be controlled very finely.
Yes, yes, that was the thing. Yesterday we had a very beautiful first half of the piece where everything seemed to be in such a beautiful balance. The background sound was even to the sounds that you were playing, and then of course what happened was that we got this feedback that in the beginning was very beautiful and transforming everything, but then it completely destroyed everything, and so we had to find another solution. And when I composed this piece, I wasn't I wanted to find a way how we could have not exactly a feedback, but this kind of oral reminiscence of this tonal landscape while you would be playing these very soft hums. So the microphone would still pick up something from there, and then to have this mix. But yeah, that's what we have been actually spending so much time to find how we could balance this work, that this oral reminiscence would be there, but at the same time we wouldn't get feedback that would just at one point take over everything. And
I would just like to play the end where I stopped right now once more, because I think well, for me it always takes some time after having played these high notes, and when they vanish, to realize, oh, they're still there. So I think we just listen for a second again to where I stopped playing right now. I give you the good sound, and it's not much, but it's still these what is it, a C or an A? This one is always audible.
this, and also the D, I think yes. So the hum was toned, yes, and there was something from the previous chord in it, and I think this is this idea of erosion, or even the idea of destruction, or something that will like ruins of this tonal landscape will still be there. So in this piece, actually, until the end, there should be somewhere hiding this very first tone that you play. But we go through several kinds of processes and overdubbing, but theoretically, every tone in this piece should be there in the very last tone of the piece.
So since Ben Richter is having his food and no one else can ask, so I will ask. There are three aspects in this piece. The one is building up. The other one is tearing down. And the third one is remembering.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you said, a small hint of the very first tone I play will be there still in the very end of the piece. Maybe you can't tell clearly, here it is, but somewhere it is. Could you say which of these three is the most important for you, or are they equally important?
I think, well, first of all, of course, they contain each other. They can't be separated, and so without the first, without the tonal landscape, there would be no reminiscence, and without these soft hums that would erase the tonal landscape, there would be no possibility to hear the reminiscence. Of course, I like what is between the lines, and I'm kind of searching always what is between the lines. No, probably as we all are. So perhaps the most unknown or mysterious part is, of course, the reminiscence of it. But of course, we don't know how it will start to work. So each time it has worked so differently. So, but that's the part that is the result of something. So we do something, or you do something, and then you hear what's the result of it, and this is something you can't control.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I think that's also why our rehearsal had to be so long yesterday. But we always had to do this step again. We do something, and only afterwards we can tell what's the result.
And yes, that took time.
That took time, and several times, just to tell it to the others, several times we said, oh, we're just going to make a run through. And but we couldn't do it because somewhere in between it was obvious that
something always happened.
But if I mention these 3 points, building up, tearing down, reminiscence, actually there's a 4th point. The 4th point is being on the edge of something, which when we talked about the piece and in the other rehearsals, you mentioned that very often, that you want to create this situation that's not stable by itself, but unstable in certain ways. So I think it's, well, for me, apart from these that I forgot, but for me, these are the 4 main aspects of this piece.
Yes, because acoustically what happens here is also that when you are building up, for example, the first tonal, let's call it first tonal landscape, there are so many tones in it that they start already distort each other, or they start to somehow change the overall quality. Something else happens there, and when we do the same process with the second tonal landscape, then there is already this reminiscence of the first landscape and the hums, and they are already changing the second landscape. So we can't even hear the second landscape the way we heard the first landscape. So everything is constantly changing, actually, the overall shape. So of course, some things were surprises for me, because I when I wrote, I assumed that, oh, the second landscape will be very clean and will sound generally the same way as the first one, but I didn't. What I didn't know was that these soft hums and this reminiscence still interfere so much with the second landscape, and of course the third landscape is just ruins of the what it's written. So I guess it's very much on the edge also, in that sense. And of course we have had so many different ways how to find out the sound engineering possibilities, and I'm sure like in another format that is maybe an exhibition format of having, I don't know, 16 different speakers, there would be much room to play. So now we have designed this piece for this occasion and these possibilities, to have a stereo and to try to build it up in this way. So I think
actually, I mean, no one knows how it really sounds in my living room, this piece. I mean, I don't know because I'm sitting here and playing, and which is also an advantage. We did all the rehearsals, of course, because Liisa is in Estland and I'm in Germany. So we did all the rehearsals in Zoom, and the soundtrack is made completely for Zoom. So the best sound she is having, different from concerts with multi-channel, where you have the sweet spot, which usually is the place of the composer, and all the others have a sound that's not as good as the composer has. But now everyone who is in Zoom has the perfect sound.
Yes, and we haven't heard actually the sound. Like you don't know the sound what I have, and I don't know the sound what you have. So it's very crazy. I mean, to work with this kind of material actually over the Zoom, because we are like you know, all these little details or these balancing things
but the normal way is that you're trying to have a good sound in the hall and then transport it as good as possible to Zoom. And now we didn't care about how it sounds here, and we just cared about the best Zoom sound we could get. What we don't know is how it sounds on YouTube, but someone will tell us afterwards. But no, in a way, because during this pandemic times, we have been also with the piano trio thinking a lot about this question, and of course me with all my work with the online concerts I did, and now with the Salon, how can you use all these internet devices to really make music, and not just like making a photo of making a video and sending it. And in this case, this really, for me, this is really a step to using Zoom not for transportation, but we worked with it, and the sound is the result.
And therefore we can have Ben and others joining us also.
And that's again the great thing, that it's I mean, we're in two completely different parts of Europe, and Ben is in the US, and we're just here together. I love that. I love that. And it's also ecologically perfect. So Sunday, you wrote a mail. We talked about it already yesterday, which was a bit disturbing for me, because you said, well, now the piece is like this, but it could have been also gone. It could have gone also in so many different directions. For instance, it could have been much more playful. That's what you wrote. And I said, well, I'm glad I'm not a composer, because that's your problem as composers, that you have, at a certain point, have to take this decision that I'm going to go in this direction, and there are hundreds of other directions I'll just let drop, and I'll take this one. I mean, I'm playing this piece, and if I realize I made a decision in playing it, I still have the possibility of a next performance, if there is any, to make it better. I mean, of course, you could work with a work in progress, so you could always change it, but still the idea in some way is that you write a piece that well, even if it's work in progress, you can't use anyways. So what are you missing in this piece?
I think the moment I told you also what sometimes I think also other composers experience is when they have sent the final draft out, suddenly all these ideas that were kept, that you had to focus on this idea, all these other ideas that were there, they suddenly rush into your brain and tell, oh, but you could have done this, and you could have done that, you could have, and so you have suddenly you're overwhelmed with all these other possibilities. And I think it just happens when you the tension is released, probably some kind of neurochemical creative process happens, explodes in one's brain at a certain moment, and so I think that was what I experienced. But of course, in a way, this is a very aesthetic piece because each tone is recorded by you very skillfully. So Matthias is using a looping pedal that was not designed for feet, but he adopted amazing sensitivity in recording these 8 loops and these sequences at the time. Of course, yeah, you have many possibilities with Looper, and I'm using a very simple process there. But I think also, in a way, this piece is very honest about sound. That it's a sound piece, and it really just puts the sound and the complexity of sound in the foreground. So that's why it never gets into certain kind of expressiveness, or I guess what James Tenney would say, there's no drama, or it's a process, and it's rather concentrated process in this piece. But Matthias, you can never even play 2 notes. Oh, you can actually you can play 2 notes in a row 2 times, but that's it. and then you have several other choices, of course, also how to balance and how the duration of these things, but this is what you're relating to the moment. But yeah, I mean, these were the choices for me that would just be good for this idea. I felt that I have to reduce.
Yeah, Ben, I don't know if people on YouTube can see what you write in the chat, so just talk.
Well, I've been shy to talk, but
well, please.
I keep thinking about the piece through this, or what we've heard about it so far, through what you talked about, erosion and sediment, and this, it's constantly slowly transforming. I think I so far my idea of what we're hearing is that it's not dramatic in the human sense, but that we have this landscape that is transforming, and that the drama is the shifting that's happening through time, and that it has a time scale that's different from our own, that there's a mysterious power outside of us that's somehow part of this. But this is why I write instead of talk.
Well, a mysterious power would be dramatic again. But I mean, for instance, the continental drift, it's absolutely undramatic, but we have the earthquakes as a result of it, which are a real dramatic problem for us human beings. But for the geology, they are no drama at all. Isn't it?
Well, the continental drift is incredibly dramatic if you live
in California
500 million years, then
Yeah.
it must be happening very quickly to you.
Yeah. Well, and it's dramatic if you're living in California. Or it might be dramatic, or in other regions of the world. But I mean, I often think this: if something in nature happens and people are telling about fierce storms coming over the water, no storm is fierce. It's just a storm. And it's the nature of a storm of being strong, but it's not fierce.
Yes. Well, I have to bring one other element in, because of course it is the time when we are right now, it is so crazy. And when we think of the destruction that humans have made during the last 1.5 months of the war, then while I was writing it, of course, I couldn't avoid it. And that was also, I didn't want to address it directly, but of course it came also into this selection of forces and how we have to cope with it somehow.
Yeah, you had in the first foreword you mentioned the war in Ukraine. In the new version, it's vanished, like things vanishes in this piece. But yeah, I mean, also for me, I made this Ukraine Salon, which was very obvious. But I mean, I'm affected by this situation, but it's hard to tell what's the result of it. Even I guess you can't tell what's different in this piece because of the war in Ukraine. Or could you?
There's no, let's say, there's no direct connotation, or there's no hidden Ukrainian anthem inside there. Though I had this idea also, but I think in a subtle way, metaphorically, it is there, and of course it is there as one is composing this piece, and that was something I've never encountered, that a composing process can suddenly be very difficult, because we have to deal, or one needs to deal and process so much during the time. So probably that has affected the piece still. But I can't say how. I mean, not in this stage, I couldn't say how.
Yeah. Well, I think it's always, on the one hand, it's always difficult to look at your own work in a musicologist way, because it's just your own work. You don't have this distance, and of course, you will see in a year or in 2 years, we may maybe see some things you don't see now on this piece, see them more clearly. What's astonishing for me, you said it's a very aesthetic piece. And of course, right, formally, it is very aesthetic. Just build up, come down again, build up, come down, build up, come down, and then it's done. 3 times, which is not a very unusual number. But for me, while playing it, it's a very rich piece. Because these sounds that build up, and also the sounds when I played the hums over everything, it's always rich in itself. Stable on the one side, it's just I mean, it's changing all the time, but in the very end, there's a stable situation we've reached. But still, it's very rich because we have all the reminiscences and we have this very elaborate carpet of hum sounds underneath.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Also, already inside this, well, you're playing a couple of multiphonics also there, but inside all these natural harmonics, there is so much happening already, and then yes, then we have these reminiscent sounds, or the what the looper will transform them into. But then I think also when you're playing the hums, at least in the first part, you don't hear what you're playing, so you will hear it back only a little bit later.
Yeah,
I guess, yes. So there is also this moment when you are playing and recording, but you can't hear it because there is this other field of sound is stronger, and so in that sense there are lots of these elements.
Yeah. Actually, when I'm playing the hums, it's more I can't hear what I'm playing, but I hear what I'm deleting.
Yes.
By playing it.
Uh-huh.
Not always, but mostly I can tell. Now I'm deleting this one. Now I'm deleting that one. Or replacing
it. Yeah.
Moving it just to the reminiscence.
And it's nice to compose these kinds of little processes where you have these tones to build up something, but then when you start to hear how they vanish, you get the kind of different melody out of it.
Yeah.
So it's this. So you're composing both ways. You're from one side to the other, and from the other side to back to the beginning.
And there are 2 things from my side before I start the run. And everything you want to ask, Ben, of course. It's so fascinating. In the very beginning, I play these 2 notes. This one, and they are looped, and they are building together. And then, this is my 3rd note. But always, before I play it, I just hear it, I already hear it in the loops. And even more clearly than after the next 3 notes, there's a lot of things going on, and then all of a sudden, there's very clearly this A coming. Just I didn't play an A so far. I played 3 kinds of D, and I played 3 kinds of mistuned C sharps. But I didn't play an A. And it's not coming somewhere earlier, but it's always right before I want to play it, it's sounding. That's really amazing.
Well, it's the third. I mean, it's the third overtone of the D. So and when you have these 2 Ds that are very, very slightly different, I guess it even makes the A beating a little bit more there. So So
but
yeah,
how does
I
it
took
start?
use of these little elements, and then that you have in few places you have also the different tones, but of course the overtone series, and I'm playing with it. I'm playing and I'm mixing, fusing different overtone series there. And the way how at least in the first part it comes out most clearly is that I'm kind of trying to approach the sound in a way that is like the closest step to one another. So you bring out maybe the most present overtones, or you play with these small scent deviations and add tones to there, and while it's suddenly you think that, oh, this is a D major harmony, but then something else happens there and ruins it, and
Yeah. Yeah, but that's very fascinating, and that it's not just coming sometimes, but almost every time. So that works really, really stable. And my last thing, you gave it a subtitle, which in the newest version, which was a great joy for me to read it. A Lightscape for Matthias. A Lightscape. Also auf Deutsch Landscape heißt Landschaft, Lightscape heißt sozusagen Lichtschaft. So yeah, it's great. I love that.
Yeah, I think that should have a direct phenomenal meaning to it. Sound and light is quite, I think is quite you can see them parallelly as you would see abstract painting, maybe a landscape or certain color diffusion. I think this is very much it's kind of a sound canvas, this piece. So
yeah, but a Lightscape is much nicer than a sound canvas.
I felt so too. Yeah.
Ben, is there anything you would like to comment on or ask before I play the complete piece? I mean, we can go on talking afterwards anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's nice. I'm very excited to hear it. And then I'll probably have more questions afterwards than now.
Okay, so I have to do something. This I used it for my speech. Now it will be for the cello again. So the microphone out of the main mix and make a recording, which I started. Now I have to delete all the old loops. And I have to give you the good sound. Anything else? Okay, so here we go.
Thank you.
No, come on. So, Cantica.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you. It's really an exciting piece. And there's already in the first part, so nice things arose from it tonight, which I haven't heard. Well, I heard other nice things, but this time it was the high pitches melted somehow better than in other times, I felt. But Ben, actually, you being the only one who's not involved in the performance.
Well, it was a I'm hearing myself in a little bit
Sorry.
echoed. So
Otherwise, if I put the good tone, you have the echo. No.
it was a really beautiful piece and really captivatingly performed. And one thing that struck me about it is, as you say, things arose in this performance. There's so much that's actually emergent from the little tiny accidents of any unique performance, right? Because you end up layering these many loops of many unique moments. And you're using these very sort of fragile techniques where, you know, the little grains and like slips of the sound are really a big part of it. And they end up creating the, you know, unique little rocks and leaves and so forth of the landscape that then build up over each other over time. So you're really creating quite a unique sort of space, landscape, lightscape for any given performance or iteration. So I'm really curious also what the other performances that you did while preparing the piece were like, and it can really be a really it's like a family of pieces or a sort of region of pieces in that sense. And it's also interesting how you know, I'm not sure exactly what the method is for what happens. I'm sure this is in the composition, what's happening live and what's high in the sort of looping mix and what's low in the looping mix, and how much of that is sort of emergent from the performance conditions and how much of that is a carefully sculpted element of the piece. But it really, the way that this sort of the new sediment landed and arrived and then slowly blended into everything was, I think, really beautiful and really made a striking backbone to the piece for me.
Thank you. Do you want to comment, Matthias, or should I?
You go.
Well, about the different run-throughs we had, then yeah, definitely it will sound very much according to what is happening, those tiny moments that are happening inside the piece. And also in some cases we had more some rhythmical, because of the loops, sometimes they became very rhythmical, so you could hear a lot of periodicity, and at one point I also asked Matthias to try to play against it, not to get inside this loop if it happens. Today it wasn't so much present, these rhythmical loops that just happen technically, but I think one really relates to to these little happenings inside the piece, or at least for me, my brain starts to make sense of them immediately, or somehow starts to, if I would play, I would play accordingly to that, and then that kind of creates a very new situation every time I think, or I assume. And also it is already on the third scene. I think it is very much it's very much influenced by what is happening before, or how strong the volume is, because one really plays very differently when the volume is very loud and or when it's softer, and so it's influencing in that way quite a lot what one decides to bring out. And I think today's performance, it also felt that there was quite a lot was present, even just these single tones that in my imagination they weren't, so they were more melted into the background, or the background was also the foreground. But today it was quite clear when something was, the new tone was introduced, and then it went somewhere, and so it became a kind of more melodic line than just a soundscape. So, but that's one version, I think, that surprisingly even holds. Though I didn't compose it this way, but.
Well, I realized that today I was more careful about, for me it was more important when I had a new note to decide, am I entering it softly, just like creeping in this sound, or am I playing it like, here I am playing this note? Independent from the question of the recording, which of course I never start when I'm very soft. I always start the recording when I've reached a certain dynamic.
Yes.
But this was, yeah, to me, this was new, that this aspect was so important during playing. But if you ask how the different versions were, Ben, I think very obviously we too also change with every time we hear or play this piece. So I think we really, if we would talk about the run of last week, which also was different in many ways, because we changed the sound in the meantime, but we won't remember correctly how it was.
No.
Even more in a piece like this than if I had played a Bach suite last week and today.
Yeah, it really is a process. You're really just inside there, and it kind of creates a certain kind of space to inhabit, and it just happens one time. Another time there will be another kind of place somehow.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd say we end the official part of the Salon now. Thanks to everyone who listened. Thanks to Liisa for this lovely piece. Thanks to Ben for being in the conference.
Thanks to Matthias for playing, for surviving all these loops.
And
Ben.
yeah, it was the last Salon of this year. I'm not sure if I'm gonna go on with that, because On the one hand, this is something that we can do just online. The advantage, I mean, there are big advantages to do it online. If I did it in my living room, neither Liisa nor Ben would have been here, or maybe Liisa would have come for the premiere of her piece, but Ben would not have come from Massachusetts to Dresden. So for me, it's still a big. There are a lot of reasons to do it, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna next year. Anyway, it was a pleasure tonight, and it was a pleasure to have all this series, and I'm glad that we had such a different color to the Musikalischer Online-Salon this last piece. Ja, also vielen Dank an Liisa, vielen Dank an Ben an Liisa für das Stück, an Ben für die Teilnehmer hier in der Konferenz. Das war jetzt der letzte Salon dieses Jahr. Ich weiß noch nicht, ob ich das nächstes Jahr weitermache. Ich habe den Eindruck, es ist auf der einen Seite sind wir alle so gesättigt davon, dass Sachen in Zoom und online stattfinden, dass es vielleicht weniger attraktiv ist als vom Jahr. Auf der anderen Seite hat dieser musikalische Online-Salon einfach Vorteile, die eine Vorortveranstaltung so nicht haben könnte. Und, also wie zum Beispiel heute, dass wir aus Estland und Massachusetts und Dresden hier zusammen sind, und vielleicht wäre Liisa für die Uraufführung gekommen, aber Ben hätte garantiert nicht den Weg von Massachusetts nach Dresden gefunden, außer er wäre zufällig gerade um die Ecke. Gut, das werden wir sehen, aber es war jedenfalls, war eine schöne Serie, auch dieses Jahr wieder wie letztes Jahr. Ich finde es schön, dass jetzt mit dem Stück von Liisa nochmal so eine ganz andere Farbe auch da reingekommen ist. Und ja, wenn ich weitermache, melde ich mich. Wenn ich was anderes online mache, melde ich mich auch. Einen schönen Abend.